Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. I'll get right into the introduction so we have plenty of time. Maria Cipollone is the user experience design researcher at Zynga in San Francisco, of course. She's also completing a PhD in media and communication at Temple University. Her academic work focuses on motivation and video games, specifically in the gaming environment Minecraft, which I'm sure many of you know. She's been a Haystack Scholar and recently received the Customer Love Award at Zynga. And Maria will be talking about the problem with video games and learning.
So thank you for coming today. We were talking outside before I began this talk. I should probably call this my problem with video games and learning. I don't know if many of you really feel like there is a problem with video games and learning. I tend to. Maybe it's just my problem. My talk today is really going to be a professional, personal / narrative journey where I sort of show you how this problem keeps turning up for me and what questions remain as a result of it. I don't have an incredibly long talk. In my life, welcome interruption. I'm sure you won't do that because that's really not the decor here. But if there's something I say that strikes you that you really want to interrupt, I absolutely welcome it. I come from a massive Italian-American family that kind of functions like the Apollo Theater, so I'm used to being interrupted. If you'd like to heckle me at any point, I can take it. So this kind of sounds like a crazy person ranting and rambling, but it's also serving as my table of contents for today. As I said, I'm going to really talk about who I am, and where I've come from professionally that have sort of led me to the questions. And then I'll delve into some of my academic work. And then talk about, again, these issues that I sort of see forming whenever I approach video games and learning. And then, what other questions sort of remain. And I hope at that point, we can have sort of a discussion about whether or not you think these are valid questions or how you approach them, et cetera. So I'll try and go slowly. I don't have an incredibly long talk. I don't have an incredibly long attention span, so that's probably why I don't plan really long talks. So as most human beings do, I, have memories that I think are meaningful and they serve as turning points in my life. And this is one of them that I've decided is meaningful and was a turning point in my life. When I was younger, I worked in nonprofits around the Philadelphia area. In particular, I worked at West Philadelphia High School, which, yes, is for sale right now. The building was condemned and they built a brand new building. So you can imagine how great the conditions in the building were when we worked there. But West Philadelphia High School was your quintessential large urban district school, very high poverty rates, a lot going on, caught in a political trap of lack of funding and lack of academic achievement. I was there trying to help students with post-secondary readiness. So when they left, were they going to go to college? Were they going to get a job? How are we going to prepare them for the road ahead? And the thing that really struck me, and here's the anecdote that could either be totally disgusting or totally meaningful depending upon how you receive it, is that I sat in a room where students would come into me to talk to me about what their plans were, and they often didn't have paper and pencil, or they didn't have a checkbook or a checking account to apply to a college. But in that room, it was full of beautiful iMacs, full of them. And they just collected dust. And a lot of time, these huge cockroaches would fall from the ceiling and fall on them. And it used to make me laugh so hard that the school could get funding to have this gorgeous lab, and kids didn't have paper and pencil, and they didn't use the lab. The lab was pretty much in, it was supposed to be for some awesome music program that, of course, the teacher lost the funding, but the technology was there, right? So here we are with this state-of-the-art technology in a school that has to go up for sale because the building's being condemned. So if technology is supposed to save the face of education as we know it, that's kind of a dichotomy there, right? I was in kind of a tough position. Just because we have computing technology or we have digital technology, does it help people learn? And what do they learn? And why do so many technological advances fail to move from the periphery of formal education? This type of scenario, why is it so marginalized and doesn't really make the kind of impact we'd like it to make?
If it's okay to interrupt, like
sure.
You said, I'm just curious why there wasn't the possibility of having people come in and save and support this educational environment to make it better.
So I think because of, that could be a whole nother talk that we could talk about. But in particular, that school was so politically entrenched in tax debates about the city and where the zoning should be. The University of Pennsylvania was heavily involved with this school. It just got to the point where they sort of needed to strike the school and start over. And the community didn't have enough sort of economic prowess to demand the resources that it needed. Yeah, make sense? It's kind of a sad story. The school still exists and that community is doing well, but it's a pretty dark time. I don't know that this is a surprise to people, that there are public education systems where people lack resources and are having a hard time. Okay. Again, as I said, I can definitely mention things that cause people to heckle me. So anyway, yeah, I am a user experience researcher at Zynga, but I'm also a PhD candidate in media and comm at Temple University, which is also in Philadelphia. My studies mostly focus on the psychological processing of media. My advisor is Matthew Lombard. His work specifically focuses on the conception and measurement of telepresence or presence. I've also done some work in spatial cognition and understanding how video games can enhance and train spatial cognitive skills. Obviously, human-computer interaction has been involved in that as well. I use theories to approach intrinsic motivation in video game spaces, and I've also spent a lot of time in spaces around educational technology. And I'm sure you're getting to the point now of why I scare quote a lot of that, because I have heavy skepticism. So now we switch to what have I done. At the beginning of my PhD career, I did spend more time in schools and spent time around educational technology spaces and spaces where teachers were integrating into the K-12 classroom, learning with digital technology and learning through digital technology. Unfortunately, the only way I could see sort of video games and learning being integrated into a classroom or 21st century skills being integrated into a classroom was in spaces where there were resources. Some of the schools outside of the Philadelphia region where the tax base is much higher and teachers have more flexibility and they're not reliant on these funds from the state for passing these standardized tests with adequate yearly progress. And I sort of saw the same thing, whereas when there weren't enough resources, educational technology got pushed to the periphery. There was like too much emergency sort of stuff going on in some of the lower funded schools to really take those technologies out of the margin. So then I started getting interested in sort of more a deep psychological approach. It became really interesting to me that video games could be used as training tools. And I became particularly interested in the literature coming out of the University of Rochester, Daphne Bavellier's work on how first-person shooter games, people who tend to play first-person shooter games, particularly men, have really high spatial cognitive skills in terms of navigation skills and mental rotation. These skills are highly associated with academic gains in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So I started thinking about games as training tools. Like, okay, so how could the game itself just sort of reach the student? And I started a project where I had 30 women play Portal 2 for 90 minutes a week. And I measured pre and post their mental rotation skills, which is a spatial cognitive skill set. And what the original intent of the study is to have, over a, I think, 8-week period, have these women train with this video game and see if their spatial cognitive skills improved. And I in particular chose women because women tend to show some deficit in spatial cognitive skills, not across the board, but in general, men normally perform more strongly on these skills. So I really wanted to see if women in particular could use something like Portal 2 to train their spatial cognitive skills. But the study failed, and I learned more from the study failing, because what happened was the women started to find the game to be work, right? Which I just automatically assumed, right, that they would, who wouldn't love to be told to play Portal 2 to get extra credit for my class, right? Of course they're gonna love it, but they started dropping out. And of course, as women do, they wrote me and told me, why, Maria, it's just too much work right now. I have too much work to do to play, which was ridiculous to me. Like, why wouldn't you stop all work just to play Portal 2? And that began to beg the question, oh, so maybe video games do these wonderful things for people, but when does a video game become sort of too much work? Yeah.
So, did you give them like an hourly quota that they had to meet to play the game?
It was just a time. It was just a time period, right? So just that like 90 minutes that they had to play, and I was monitoring them through Steam, which is the game engine. Yeah. So it was once a week. Yeah, it wasn't even like extensive training. It was like over a week period, play for 90 minutes. Yeah.
Because it is like a pretty heavy puzzle game. Was part of the frustration because like did it feel like work partly because it was a puzzle game, and so if people haven't had experience with puzzle, that might seem like.
I think that's in that, and in my next slide when I talk about my work with Minecraft, I'll talk about how game design. Some game designs really just aren't, welcoming to certain types of gamers. And I think Portal 2 is a hard game, right? And I don't think that at all. I love Portal 2. It's one of my favorite games. But I think that, a lot of these women didn't play Portal, and they also, it's a weird scenario to sort of get into. So there probably were game design issues that gated them. But I focused more on the fact that the game could become work. Because thinking back, if video games and learning can really sort of help people, motivate people towards gaining positive intellectual skills, then what happens when they become work, right? And what happens when we co-opt them for predefined outcomes? So I was like operating in these two spheres, right? The sort of cognitive psych sphere and then sort of this educational technology and thinking about how the tool fits into the culture of the classroom, right? And that's why your question was so great, right? This is this question, like, how does a well-designed video game foster continued motivation, right? Will something like Portal 2 gate people from even wanting to participate if they're not the right type of person? Especially when you have predefined outcomes, right? You're not just playing Portal 2 because you feel like playing Portal 2. Now all of a sudden you're playing Portal 2 because I'm trying to get you to sharpen these spatial cognition skills. And then under those conditions, like, do video games lose their motivational appeal, right? When you change the game and it's all of a sudden not about play, it is kind of about an extrinsic motivator, what happens to the game scenario? And then in the other space is, what kind of learning is coming out of this? Can you make the argument to people, oh, well, kids should play tons of first-person shooters. It sharpens their spatial cognition skills, and they'll be great in STEM, and we want everybody to be great in STEM, right? So, what type of learning is valued in the traditional classroom setting, and does that mesh well with the formal educational setting? And can the formal educational setting actually embrace that type of learning, when it's really generally been kind of cold about it and not warmly received? So, enter Minecraft. To address the question of intrinsic motivation, or motivation in general, I went to intrinsic motivation, which is the motivation to engage in something because the activity is inherently enjoyable itself. I'll explain more about self-determination theory and cognitive evaluation theory on the next slide. But I set up my dissertation in the following way. We had 100 students in 7th and 8th grade take their favorite building from the Philadelphia region and figure out what the dimension and material makeup of the building was, and they had to replicate it in groups together in the Minecraft world. If you don't know Minecraft, it's a game. It could also arguably be an operating system. In some ways you can play the game in two modes. You can play in survival mode or creative mode. In survival mode, you face starvation, death, zombies, creepers. In creative mode, you're just kind of existing in the environment and you can do what you want. We had them in creative mode. We did not have the students sort of face those obstacles that the game would typically present to them in survival mode. But what we wanted to measure quantitatively was, did intrinsic motivation levels fluctuate over time as the tasks got harder? As you predefined your building, had to scale it down, had to rescale it in Minecraft units. Would this work all of a sudden change the scenario of how fun the game was? We also, I was also asked to measure learning, and I really didn't want to touch learning at all because I knew what I was going to be asked to do was do a pre and post test, right? Some rote test that asked you, 3/4 plus is what in Minecraft, right? So some really rote pre-algebraic test that the kids would take before the study and after the study, which I did do, and we measured that quantitatively. But then I also did a lot of participant observation and interview, gathering qualitative data, spending time in the context of the traditional classroom to understand really how these types of practices could fit in the traditional classroom, right? And Minecraft in education is not new at all, right? It's exploding right now. There's tons of maker camps and kids who play Minecraft in school and Minecraft clubs, and there's teachers who use Minecraft, right? But when we're talking about, some of the more serious situations where intrinsic motivation to learn could really help students save their very own schools, is that reality a possibility? So yeah, I wanted to understand what happens when those two cultures met. But just to pan back and talk about what self-determination theory is and why I used it as a lens for understanding intrinsic motivation. So self-determination theory in general is a macro theory of human motivation. Cognitive evaluation theory says that if human beings are engaged in a task which fulfills these three need states, the need for autonomy, autonomous choice within a range of choices, competence, give me tasks that I can succeed at and then scaffold me to further competence with more tasks or meta tasks. And then relationships or social connection, which is more distantly related, but if that need state is fulfilled as well, what you have is sort of a humming system of intrinsic motivation where the individual is really intrinsically motivated to engage in the task over time. So what I did was I used scales to measure, through survey instrument, what the students' fluctuation in their feelings about autonomy, competence, and social relatedness were over time to see what the levels of intrinsic motivation did as the task got harder, as all of a sudden they had to rebuild a 3D building inside the Minecraft environment, as the math got tougher, as the constraints on time got tougher, measuring all those fluctuations over time. So that was the key question. As the task difficulty increased, did the game environment foster intrinsic motivation over time? So just revisiting those questions, does a well-designed video game foster intrinsic motivation over time? In terms of Minecraft, yes. Minecraft was the optimal space for students to operate with one another, gain competencies over time, make autonomous choices within a specific range of possibilities, and support each other socially through network participation in the game. Minecraft is a beautiful example of how you can foster intrinsic motivation for academic lessons. Under the conditions, do video games lose their motivational appeal? No. I mean, the intrinsic motivation levels over time just stayed high. I saw zero fluctuation over the 12 weeks of the study. Now, certainly you could extend the study to 6 months and look longitudinally, but in that time frame, intrinsic motivation remained high. What type of learning do video games support in the context of the traditional classroom? So this is the rub, right? So in their pre and post tests, there was a significant difference. Students did perform better in the subjects of ratio and proportion after the test than they did, after the study than before, right? So you could say that there was success that way, that the intrinsic motivation that they sustained to do the task resulted in deeper conceptual learning. However, when I sat down and talked with students, their story about what they learned included nothing about mathematics. They said things to me like, well, we learned to trust each other. We also learned to police each other. There's a common action of griefing in Minecraft where you go around and put TNT on people's buildings and set everything on fire, right? They learned to trust each other. In a lot of the participant observation videos that I have, you see students actually sort of 3D, right? They're building and they're drawing, and you see them interacting with each other, right? And that really is the qualitative side of the learning. That's the learning, right? Is that they had this networked participation with each other. They had to sort of gauge social rules and organize a society. It could get really Lord of the Flies in there if you let a bunch of 12-year-old boys grief everything with TNT and pour waterfalls, right? So they really managed the society inside the game. And just as a note, as the researcher, I did not give them any instruction in how to play the game. I gave them subpar equipment. They had 2008 white MacBooks with bad mice that they were trying to rub on high friction surfaces. They had all kinds of tech problems. They dealt with a lot of barriers, but they still were motivated to do it. What they learned were to sort of co-op together to complete a mission, and they loved that. That was very, very bonding for them. Can the formal, oh, I'm sorry, so sorry. I hope it hasn't been up long. Yeah.
So they, just on the academic outcomes, so you did see an improvement. How did it compare to the control? So were they a lot better?
They were it was tiny, so there was no significance, there was pre and post significance in the groups that had received the treatment, but the control, there wasn't in the difference like across the groups. Okay. But it wasn't a strict, you couldn't do a strict sort of inferential methods with it because it wasn't a random sample, it really was a case study. Yeah, I didn't randomly sample the students, so I can't infer a ton from that.
I'm curious more about the intrinsic motivation. Do you think that was from the preconditions that you laid out, present in Minecraft, or a previously existing interest that a lot of children might have had?
Absolutely. So I think it was something like, believe it or not, I think it was something like 80% of the students had never touched Minecraft before and had and it was largely female, and most of the females had very negative attitude towards Minecraft. I'll get you in 1 second. Minecraft was like 9-year-old little brother's game, like no interest in playing it at all, right? Yeah.
How did you go about the assessment of this intrinsic motivation?
Sure. So self-determination theory is a long, has a lot of long academic history attached to it, and there's even selfdeterminationtheory.org, and there's long intrinsic motivation inventory scales and all sorts of scales that I modified for the particular context. There's also so the second citation, Ryan and Rigby talk about actually applying this to games. So there's also scales available for measuring in-game intrinsic motivation to complete tasks in a game.
What kind of questions were on the pre and post tests?
What's that?
What kind of questions were on the pre and post tests?
So they were like fraction questions.
What kind of fraction questions?
Like converting fractions, doing sort of proportions, like if the door in a classroom is 12 feet and then we shrink it down by 1/8, like those kind of...
I mean, you wouldn't expect a video game to give improvements in that. If you test them on complex performance tasks, you could expect, and you actually would have probably got a 20% gain.
Absolutely. And that was kind of my fight with my committee, was that they were like, well, we understand that this test is totally extrapolated from the real scenario, but indirect measurement is the name of the game in public schools, right? Yeah. They don't measure anything that you're learning currently. So they were like, well, this test, right, this rote test is the language of schools. Yeah. So let's use what's contextually relevant. Yeah. Makes sense? Of course. I was shocked that there was even a gain. Yeah. I was totally shocked. And I don't think you could say it was practice effects, because it had been a 12-week period. But was there another question? No? Okay. So I think we were here. The very last question, right, is sort of where my problem lies. So, can formal education spaces like the ones I'm talking about, ones where there's really a lack of resource and really a need for deeper intrinsic motivation and really fostering students' sense of autonomy over their learning and their sense of competence would really, help them make academic gains and life gains in general. It feels really good to be intrinsically motivated to do something. Can sort of the schools that they live in and operate in support these kind of things? So the answer for me wasn't categorically no, but it was pretty obvious that I was the PhD researcher, that I was the Minecraft lady once a week, right? So I was this separate experience that had nothing to do with their typical school day, right? Which probably affected their intrinsic motivation to engage, right? And you hear the students say to me time and again, well, it wasn't a day where I had to do practice tests. It wasn't a day where I had to write things out on a worksheet, right? And the school had a lot of technology available to it, but by and large, lead-based technology was still like the MO, right? So the other thing is you have to consider the conditions that I was in. So there were 100 students. The teacher would typically be alone in a classroom, smaller than this, but with, 30 students at a time crammed into a tiny old classroom that she's trying to manage and update. And at the year that I started this study in 2013 in Philadelphia in particular, a couple schools actually didn't open that year because they were not funded to open their doors in September. So you're talking about a time of economic crisis in these schools where they had to have parents come in for volunteers because they didn't have people for, the school nurse and the lunch assistant. I mean, it's kind of crazy to ask them to embrace Minecraft in the classroom when they can't even barely open the doors at this point, right? So incredibly strapped and tough conditions for a teacher. So of course, when you're trying to manage a group of 30 students, you're just gonna go to the board and start writing, you know, here's how you do it. Here's how you do it to pass the test that we all have to take so we can get money to keep the doors open. You know, is the formal education system in a position where it can be warm to these kind of technologies? No, how could they, right? They can keep their doors open. So it was really tough to sort of see that. And the administration was welcoming to me and they were happy. They really wanted me to do an after-school program, right? They really wanted me to play with kids after school at Minecraft, keep them safe, keep them off the street, right? Use Minecraft as a carrot, right? Not a learning environment. So that's really, you know, kind of the answer to that question. Yeah, interrupt me, please.
So there's so many things in education that are broken.
Yeah.
So you can look at like logistical things, mismatched resources,
Sure.
you know, there's computers, but people haven't been trained to use them or whatever it is.
Sure.
So against the background of all the things we already know are wrong in these schools, where did you see the most, like where was the possible short gain? Like, oh, actually this could have been achieved. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if you had the authority to delegate you the resources, where would it have been, this would have been
The most impactful?
yeah, like, so, you know, there's just so many problems. Like, where could you have, oh, World of Warcraft could have been used for that, but we weren't in an opportunity to do it. Or,
I think actually, you know, the top half of this shows that Minecraft really is something that should be used in the regular school day as a virtual classroom. It functions so optimally. So that was an area of win. Is that what you're kind of asking me? Am I missing it?
teach them to cooperate and work
More
on
than cooperate.
goals
It
and-
taught them, yeah, 3D modeling. It taught them how to, like, okay, we don't understand this. We've got to go on Minecraft and watch Stampy Longnose build the blah, 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 right? So they're going to find resources, right? But at the same time, right, you have all those sort of old school cultural things where you have to unlock YouTube because they're not allowed on YouTube. They're not allowed really on the internet, right? So many blocks along the way. But I do think Minecraft itself is a huge gain. It's a huge positive spot in schools.
So they learn how to not be on the streets and unlock all these things that are required to be a citizen
No,
on the
I
internet.
think they learned a sense of competence, autonomy, and social connectedness, which inspired them to learn despite that there were obstacles. I mean, I didn't give them much to work with. I was like, pick a building outside. They were like, okay, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Okay, great. What's it made of? What are the size? What are the dimensions? How tall is it? How deep is it?
Right.
Go do that. Go figure it out. Okay, now go build it in the space. How much is, 1 meter in Minecraft?
Right.
No, I built no worksheets, no lesson plans, no nothing, no introduction. Go, solve it. They did it, beyond all expectation. And the expectation of these students is like, oh, poor performance, we've got to get test scores to this tiny space so we can get a little more money to keep the door open a little longer.
Right.
So the founder of Minecraft
Yeah.
is on the cover of Forbes magazine
Yes, he is.
of the billionaires.
Yeah, let's get the money from him.
The new billionaires this year, because he had the most colorful story, which is terrific. Everybody should read it just for the fun of it.
Okay.
And he's looking for something to do. So what
That's a
shall we
reason- that's a
what
research
shall we
thing.
go to him and tell him to do next?
So, I mean, I don't know. It's not about throwing money at a problem. I don't know what Mojang can do. I think also,
No, he was completely broke when he started.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to talk about this, or do you have another?
Well, I have a question to follow up.
Okay, I'll get you. So, I don't know. I mean, there's a long discussion we can have about this. I mean, if you're asking me if I should go tell him, oh, hey, we need you to build, a video game that, fits the needs of the school and teaches algebra and blah, 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 absolutely not. Any game, unfortunately, that is specifically designed with curricular goals in mind is normally doomed to fail, right? Because games are built to, a good game teaches you how to play the game. Whatever meta lessons you get are human beings getting meta lessons, right? What's beautiful about Minecraft is that he really just built an open operating system. And there is an EDU mod that we use. So there's an educational mod where the teacher can control students because students have access to stuff like TNT, where they blow each other's stuff up and they can curse and they can do all kinds of things. I didn't put a lot of constraints on the students. I kind of let them behave how they would typically behave. If someone griefed your building, then you had to deal with them. Or we have to deal with people who grief stuff. So I don't know what I would tell them. I don't think I really answered your question, but that's where my
I
head is.
didn't expect it to immediately, but come back another time.
Yeah. We'll get his number.
So Minecraft was never designed to be educational.
Absolutely not.
And there are tons of educational games
Applications,
that have failed, just in general. Or maybe they haven't failed, but they're out there and they've been there before Minecraft and well after.
Absolutely.
Can you comment on where one succeeds to be an educational game, even though it never meant to be?
You want me to have the Jim G conversation?
Up to you.
So, as a student of, Mimi Ito's work and Jim G's work, I mean, I think that games are learning opportunities in and of themselves. And this is where my work at Zynga cross-sects, right? Because people tend to think of games as, a long extended interaction with extrinsic motivators, like do this and you'll win this. Oh, it's all about leveling up. Oh, it's all about getting the most, and they're not. Like, the interactive system in and of itself is teaching you how to interact with the system, and you're gaining skills and you're making autonomous choice within that range and you're connecting to other people while you're doing that. So any game that's designed to enhance the experience rather than to pull on some extrinsic lesson is going to far succeed. Because, I think it was Amy Bruckman who called educational games chocolate covered broccoli. We can't slap game design on top of school. Game design in and of itself is an art form that teaches people how to make autonomous choice and how to gain skills and how to be connected with other people. And that is intrinsically rewarding if it's well designed. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
So maybe games are better suited to teach specific skills instead of knowledge, which is actually what we're trying to do in school anyway. We're trying to teach skills.
Skills. Right.
Yeah. So like if you're trying to teach architects or construction workers, I don't know, maybe you could use Minecraft for that instead of testing people with mathematical knowledge and having them go on and get a degree and then they become an architect, and then anyway they still have to learn how to practically do their job.
Sure, and I would tend to agree, except the things that my participants were most vocal about was really how they learned to relate to each other in a new way. So the sort of human psychological lessons and the skill and drill lessons, I mean, they've had plenty of skill and drill, right? So what was most valuable to them about the game was how they sort of, this is going to be really warm and fuzzy, but how they grew as people. Yeah.
It sounds like you can make an analogy to athletics. It seems like that.
Certainly, I think you could, and self-determination theory gets used in that context as well.
So the findings of those things are similar. Like athletics don't directly improve. My understanding of literature anyway, athletics doesn't directly improve skills, but it seems to have some sort of indirect effect on motivation. Absolutely,
absolutely, and motivation is a good thing. I think the question we end up with, and you'll see, is that well, what is school for? What is formal education for, right? And that's what we're sort of getting into. Yeah.
So you sort of talked about how you think these educational games that are just designed for educations don't really succeed because they're kind of chocolate covered broccoli, and that
they can be.
Or yeah,
I think there's a lot of educational scenarios that are good. But go ahead.
That they successful games are designed sort of to take you through the game. But my question is then, what about, has anyone ever tried? I don't actually know much about it. To sort of take the kind of mobile game approach, because there's some really successful mobile games that aren't really designed for the game themselves, but to sort of put people in a Skinner box cycle and take kind of money, or train them to put in time.
So knowing where I work and be as honest as you want.
Yeah.
What game are you thinking of that pinches just as a pinch? Because I hear that all the time about Zynga games. Zynga games are just a pinch.
I didn't really have a specific game in mind. I was just saying, has this kind of some of the tricks that people use for some of these mobile games been tried in education to kind of mask the...
Yeah, I don't think we've gone into that yet. I think mobile gaming is a space where we're, in a really wild scenario where a lot of companies are just throwing things up against the wall to see what sticks. But any mobile game that is worth its salt, has retention, long-term retention, is providing much more than sort of behavioral Skinnerian feedback. Right? I would argue that it's providing people with a deep, intrinsically motivating experience. So, that's why I have problems with gamification and modifying systems to look like games when they're not really games. The depth and quality of design is really what drives people to do hard. Because games are hard work. Let's not lie. If you've ever played WoW is hard work. you have to be, you have to get some joy out of that work to keep doing it for a long time. So I don't know, but I haven't seen that work yet. Yeah.
So it seems like Minecraft was a big boom because it facilitated the project and project skills and how you interact. And I was just thinking, you know, when the curriculum, when it's like, I want to teach a game to teach fractions, unless you like really have something that truly is like facilitating that naturally.
Yeah.
So, but I just think back to like games from my childhood that I thought, like, I don't know if, I think I was possibly intrinsically motivated because I really liked math.
You really
I had
liked it,
fractions in the game, I just really
sure.
liked enjoying it. But I remember games like Incredible Machine Contraptions or Carmen Sandiego that had sort of like curricular content on top of it, but also in it there was like algebraic thinking or whatnot. And I don't know if, like, has there been really good studies on more than just spatio-cognitive, like if it increases algebraic, like underlying concepts like algebraic thinking or like reconsidering history or...
So there's a lot of literature out there. I think that you probably want to look at like Constance Steinkuhler's work, and I can tell you this stuff after the talk. I can write it down for you or give me my email. You want to look at what Katie Salen does. She actually has schools that are dedicated to game design. And I think there are a lot of experiences from our childhood where there were well-designed games that seemed like they were educational, that were working. But when they're designed specifically in that mode of like skill, like math blastery, right? Like solve the problem. When I was a kid, we had in television, and it was like Donkey Kong math, and he used to like run down the river and scoop up numbers. And we used to play that while my mom was home, and then when she left, we played Pitfall, right? Because that game was awful. So, like, I think there are scenarios, and I also think that Mimi Ito did a long sort of ethnographic work around children's software that I think could be informative to you, too. Yeah.
And I guess it sort of brought me up, I was thinking, like, do you think that schools would start to embrace them if, like, the games were redefined to be like, these are the kinds of skills that they would bring up? And if it did fit into their curriculum, like their idea of what
I don't think it, I have to tell you, like, and I don't think this is true of every school. I'm talking about like some of the schools in like serious trauma states.
I mean,
I don't think that their reticence to embrace these technologies has anything to do with it doesn't match the curriculum. Many of the people that you meet in schools are just trying to keep the kids in a safe space and trying to keep their jobs and trying to keep the doors open. And you know, where I come from in Pennsylvania, the state laws are such that if these schools don't perform on these tests in a certain way, they don't get the money to open their doors. So you've truncated people's desire to learn down to just solve this problem, right? And we as human beings, our modes of communication, I'll get you in 1 second, our modes of communication aren't like totally advanced. Like, you know, the kids and I were trying to do a problem, and you know, I'm trying to sort of show them in Minecraft the layout of, you know, how to proportionally represent something. And in the end, what do I end up doing? I grab a marker and I start writing, right? I need you to get this in your head. You're going to swallow this pill, right? So we're still learning how to communicate through games as well. So I don't know that it's like, oh, it doesn't fit in the curriculum. It's just like, look, we've got so many dire things going on here. Like, can you just babysit them with Minecraft while we go solve all these other fires? Whereas we're trying to argue, but hey, the Minecraft could do so much more than just babysit.
How would you predict socioeconomic status in different types of schools would reflect the same type of experiment?
I think that, and it's funny that, you know, I did this at a school that's actually relatively economically diverse in the city, and there are students who, you know, and they actually were probably one of the few schools that could embrace it because they did have the time and luxury and good enough test scores to sort of support this environment. I think you see a lot of that. You know, I've had people contact me from the New York area, and there's a lot of, you know, kids in New York whose parents have a lot of money, and on the weekend they take them to the Apple store and they do maker stuff and they use Minecraft. And I think there's a lot of cross-section of whether or not your parents can afford to send you to a place where, you know, you can embrace these types of technologies, or you're in private school where it's like they can afford to sort of experiment with these programs and make them more long-term. I think it would change the conditions a lot.
That these private schools get more and learn more than, I guess.
I think they're freer in many ways. They have more autonomy. Many schools that don't have economic constraints have the freedom to experiment with different types of experiences to help their students learn without trying to generalize too much about everyone's experience. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, the teacher that I worked with, she was a science and mathematics teacher. And even though I think more and more, in my generation, I played a lot of video games, and I share that, with this younger group. They play a lot of video games as well. But the teacher that I worked with was really intimidated by Minecraft. She was not, the computers teacher who was downstairs, who was a guy who played Minecraft on his own by himself. And, so there were some sort of stereotypes roaming around in there where it's like, which teacher is likely to really adopt this? I think Minecraft in particular is much more palatable and it's sort of easier for teachers to adapt. I don't know that you could have asked this teacher to bring in World of Warcraft or anything like that into this game. The other thing is when you use a system like Minecraft, which is, when we talk about learning and cognitive theory in terms of learning, it's a constructionist system. So knowledge is built through tinkering with the environment, which at its core is like a Piaget idea, right? You gain knowledge acquisition through experimentation and failure in the environment rather than sort of here's the knowledge, swallow the pill, right? And what that does then is it leaves the teacher in sort of a decentralized position. The teacher is not always the seat of knowledge. The seat of knowledge is experimentation with this environment. And there's a lot of times, especially for me as the researcher, where the students they just knew more than me, and you have to let go of that. And as an instructor, that's a curious position. I've been a professor for a while, and it's hard sometimes when you're like, I don't know what you're about to ask me. So using video games in the classroom requires sort of a shift to a different set of power relationships. We talked about what kind of learning is valued, I think, extensively. And does the organizational structure, accommodate these kind of experiences? And I can't stress enough that Mimi Ito is doing some good work around this, and Katie Salen as well. I'm going to skip over this. I think we've talked about it. It's funny when I saw this story come out that these teachers in Atlanta were being arrested for cheating on test scores. This is, of course, not the first time this has happened. I think the story says something like prosecutors said the educators sought bonuses for higher test scores. Maybe they did, maybe they were sort of fudging their students' test scores because they wanted more money, or maybe, the pressure of trying to get money for your school became so intense. This idea of holding people to these standards is not foreign. It's not ridiculous. People need to be held to standards in public institutions. But certainly, I think we've gotten way out of hand with how valuable these types of standardized tests are and what type of knowledge they're testing. And then we sort of end up with, well, we have these great experiences like Minecraft where we know kids learn and they're gaining these great skills. What is the school day for then? What is its position? Like, are you supposed to be learning what they learned in Minecraft? Are you supposed to be learning to network knowledge with each other and to problem solve it? That all sounds great, but if it doesn't belong in the school day, what does belong in the school day? And that's sort of the presentation of my problem with video games learning. Thank you.